الله أكبر الله أكبر الله أكبر الله أكبر أشهد أن لا إله إلا الله أشهد أن لا إله إلا الله أشهد أن محمدا رسول الله أشهد أن محمدا رسول الله حي على الصلاة حي على الصلاة حي على الفلاح حي على الفلاح الله أكبر الله أكبر لا إله إلا الله
Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Before I mention, I just want to announce that we ran into some technical difficulties. So you guys, we have no YouTube live, so you guys can go on the Facebook live or the Zoom link that was sent out. Alhamdulillah Rabbil Alameen, wassalatu wassalamu ala rasulih al-kareem, amma ba'd. قال الله تعالى في القرآن المجيد بعد أن أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم كل نفس ذائقة الموت صدق الله العظيم. Dear respected family, friends and elders, Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuhu. Inshallah, today I'll be talking about an event that many people tend to ignore, and an event that we as humans have to come to terms with. And the event that I will be discussing today is death. Inshallah, in this khutbah I will go over two main subjects. The first of them being the reality that death will come to everyone. And secondly, I will talk about what happens before the angel of death takes one's soul. I'll begin my khutbah inshallah by reminding everyone about the reality of death. Many people live their lives as if they are never going to die. We tend to get so caught up and lost in our ways and worldly goals and affairs that we put death as an afterthought. And the akhirah is something we can eventually work for, almost as if working for the akhirah is something to do after achieving our worldly goals, or something important only at an old age. As Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala mentions in the Quran, he who chases the dunya only, khasira dunya wal akhirah, he will lose both this dunya and the akhirah. There are many occasions in the Quran in which Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala mentions the inevitability of death. One of the most famous ayahs that most of us are very familiar with, كُلُّ نَفْسٍ ذَائِقَةُ الْمَوْتِ. Every man and every soul and every creation of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will face death. This is the truth and something Allah Azza wa Jal has sworn by, and there is no escaping it. Everything will face death, be it the smallest bacteria to the angel of death himself. The trees, the plants, the sun and the moon and the earth. Every single creation of Allah will face death. And I cannot stress this enough. And there is no denying this. The scary thing is the fact that death will not come to you according to your terms. It will not come to you according to your schedule. The angel of death will not ask you, "O Muhammad or Fatima, are you prepared to leave this dunya?" When it is your appointed time, he will not hesitate. And he will take your soul. Death really does not care if you're in the most prosperous time of your life or the most depressed and lonely time of your life. When it is your time, he will take your soul and he will not hesitate. He will not come a second later nor a second earlier. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says in the Quran in Surah Munafiqun, وَلَنْ يُؤَخِّرُ اللَّهُ نَفْسًا إِذَا جَاءَ أَجَلُهَا. Allah will not delay your appointed time of death. When it is your time, it is your time. There is an amazing story that comes to mind that talks about and mentions how death will always find its way to you. Now there is a narration that is mentioned about during the time of Prophet Sulaiman alayhi salam. There is this halaqah that was going on. And in this halaqah, there is this young man who was in it. And across from him was another man. And this other man was staring at this young man very intensely and sharply. So this young man becomes really scared and frightened. And when this halaqah comes to an end, he approaches Prophet Sulaiman alayhi salam. And he asks Prophet Sulaiman alayhi salam, who is that man staring at me? So Prophet Sulaiman alayhi salam replies, that was the angel of death. So this man becomes even more scared and frightened. And he asks Prophet Sulaiman alayhi salam for help. But Prophet Sulaiman alayhi salam knows, there's nothing that he can do. Because when someone's appointed time of death, there is no escaping it. The death isn't only in Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala's hand. So this man asked Prophet Sulaiman alayhi salam to send him to India. So Prophet Sulaiman alayhi salam orders the wind to take him to India. And as soon as this man puts his 2 feet on the ground and the mud of India, the angel of death is there waiting for him. And he takes his soul over there. So the Prophet Sulaiman alayhi salam then asked the angel of death. He asked the angel of death, why were you staring at the man so intensely and sharply? So the angel of death replies, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala ordered me to take this man's soul in India. But the fact that we're hundreds and hundreds of miles away, I was confused in how I was going to do that. But subhanAllah, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is the all-wise and all-knowing. And this man from his own free will and his own choice chose to go to India. This again shows that when your appointed time has come, there's nothing that can be done to avoid it. Let me remind everyone again and again, and I cannot stress this enough, that death is in Allah's hand and only in His. This realization that death is inevitable should result in 2 things. It should provide us with an internal moral compass, and should also allow one to avoid the punishment of the grave, and that will depend on how we choose to live our lives. Now I'm going to give a small glimpse of what will happen the few seconds before the angel of death takes one's soul. Keep in mind, this is not an exact representation, but just a small taste of it. Now I want everyone who is listening and everyone in the audience to imagine a place of comfort where you feel no pain. And whether it is your couch, it is your car, it is your dining table or your bed, or your desk at your work, just imagine a place of comfort. And now just imagine this to be just a normal day. Just to be a normal day. And you wake up, you pray your Fajr Salah, you wake up, you pray your Fajr Salah, and you go about your normal day of affairs. And repeat, and in this normal day, you start to feel this intense pain in your chest. And this intense pain is so much that you get up from wherever you're sitting, whether your couch, your dining table, your bed, wherever you're sitting in a place of comfort, you get up from there. And as soon as you stand up, this pain intensifies so much. It becomes so much more unbearable that your legs cannot hold you up. And you immediately fall to the ground. And you're laying there on the ground, and you want to formulate words, and you want to yell for help. You want to scream and ask someone come to my aid. And you hope and you wish that anybody will come to your aid. You hope and you wish that somebody will come and hold your hand. You wish and you hope that somebody will stand next to you and say everything's gonna be fine. But you lie there alone and helpless. And you knew that this day is gonna come. You knew that one day this is gonna happen. But you never knew it's gonna happen like this. Then all of a sudden, as you're lying there in this excruciating pain, you all of a sudden feel this emptiness and this cold feeling at the tip of your toes. And that cold feeling and the emptiness is the angel of death extracting one's soul. It is the angel of death taking the ruh from your body, slowly pulling it. And this cold and emptiness and chill feeling, it just rises and rises. It goes from your feet onto your legs and onto your stomach and onto your chest and finally onto your throat. And every part that this cold and emptiness feeling touches, that part of your body dies. The blood starts flowing. You can no longer feel or move that body part. And when it finally comes to your throat, those are the few seconds of your life. And now you'll start to see angels coming. Now depending on whether you're a good person or a bad person, it depends. Now if you're a good person and a believer, Prophet Ibrahim says, you'll see a man, a young handsome man, and he'll come in white clothing. And he'll bring with him flowers from Jannah. And he'll bring with him such an amazing and beautiful scent. and he will come to you and he will greet you with glad tidings. But on the other hand, don't get me wrong, if you're a disbeliever and a terrible person, it's going to go completely opposite. Prophet Ibrahim ﷺ says, you will see a creature so disgusting and so evil that his head will touch the sky and his feet will strike the ground. And he will bring with him such a terrible stench. Prophet Ibrahim ﷺ said, if a person were to be punished in the grave, if there were to be any punishment, just the experience of that disgusting and evil creature will be enough. That'll be enough of a punishment. That just shows you how scary it is. Now, your soul, when it sees this creature, it'll become so scared and frightened. It'll become so scared and frightened that, it will try to take refuge and hide in your own body. It will try because it knows that, in the hereafter, in the afterlife, it's not going to be so good for him. But the angels, they beat the soul out of the body. And they drag it and they carry it to the first heaven. And the angel will knock on the gates of the first heaven. And the gatekeeper will answer and said, who are you with? Who are you with? And then the angel will reply, I am with so and so person. And he will use the most hideous words that were used for him on this dunya. And Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will say, I don't want this soul. I don't want this soul. And the soul will be thrown back into his grave. It will be thrown from the first heaven back to the grave. And that's where the questioning will begin. And this soul, it will hear his friends and his families and his close people walk away. And he will try to yell and he'll try to scream for help. But he is alone in the grave. And this is when the questioning will begin. Keep in mind that to remember death on a daily basis, the Prophet ﷺ said in a hadith, the most wise one from among you is one who remembers death the most. And the most prudent from among you is he who is prepared for death. And the one who remembers death finds within himself a moral compass. It is a way to attain a higher level of taqwa or consciousness of Allah's ever-watchful existence. Because when someone is constantly remembering death, when death is constantly on their mind, he'll remember the hereafter. He'll remember what will happen to him. And from remembering the hereafter, he will strive and do his best to attain excellence in iman and ihsan, and above all, taqwa. Strive to live your life in such a way that your fate is one of Jannah and not Jahannam, of no pain in the grave, and of course the pleasure of Allah Azza wa Jal. I will end this talk with a hadith of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. He said one time to the Sahabas, none of you should ever wish for death. None of you should ever hope for death. And his reason for saying this was because we should never ever feel satisfied with or content with our deeds. And we should never feel as if we did enough to land a place in Jannah. We should never feel satisfied. And never feel as if we attain the full pleasure of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Because there's always room for improvement and always a room to do more good deeds and to ask for forgiveness. The reality of death should only help us strive to better ourselves and attain the pleasure of Allah Azza wa Jal. Ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to protect all of us from the punishment of the grave and the punishment of the fire. Ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to protect us and our families and loved ones from the coronavirus. Before I go, inshallah, remind everyone that this was just the English bayan. You will have to pray your 4 fard at home. Jazakallah khairan. Assalamu alaikum.